But first, it is less than a week until voters in the United Kingdom decide whether to stay or leave the European Union. Campaigning was suspended for a second straight day today because of the shooting death of a lawmaker. Last night, our economics correspondent Paul Solomon explored the arguments in favor of Brexit or exiting the EU. Tonight, he hears the case for remaining. It's part of his series on making sense of financial news.
This is a two-tier debate, hearts and minds.
At the Oxford Debate Union last week, the audience seemed to side with those in favor of the United Kingdom remaining in the European Union.
I've never heard the phrase workers' rights come out the mouth of any of the three of the leading protagonists.
The man in the desert is sovereign. He is free. He can do whatever he likes. But he has no power. We're better together.
And the Remain sentiment certainly prevails at Mansfield College, where I'm spending the spring term.
We should definitely stay in Europe, absolutely unambiguously.
Lucinda Rumsey teaches Old English literature.
We should be in Europe because it's good for Europe to have us in, and we should be contributing. We're a rich country, and we should be contributing and helping people.
But why then has there been so much support for leaving? Well, one reason Rumsey speculates:
lots of English people hate the French, hate the Germans since the since the wars, and so they kind of come back to that. They don't want to be in that club with those people. They just don't like them. They haven't liked them since the 13th century. They're not going to like them now.
But put prejudice aside, says Paul Flather, who runs the Europeum, an association of top European universities. The costs of leaving, he says, are simply too great.
Every single financial, economic report of the last 2 weeks have unanimously pointed out that we will have between 2 and 4% down on growth.
Because of less trade?
Because of less trade, because of having to renegotiate agreements and not being able to sell things, of tariffs, losing markets. I think 40% of our exports go to Europe. Only 3% of theirs come to us.
Economics, the key to Conservative Prime Minister David Cameron's case for Remain.
The shock to our economy after leaving Europe would tip the country into recession. This could be, for the first time in history, a recession brought on ourselves.
And what about Mansfield's students?
I'm for remaining.
I think we should remain as well.
Remain. Yeah, I think Britain should remain.
Luke Charters-Reid came to Oxford from a low-status state school.
I think pretty much all the students I've spoke to want to stay in Europe. I think it's better off for students. We're thinking about the jobs for when we leave, and I think those jobs are more secure if we remain in Europe.
The lack of confidence people would have of a Britain outside of Europe would itself cause losses in jobs.
Ella Grodzinski says no one can predict what would happen.
But it seems to me that the predictions about what will happen if we stay are much more solid and grounded than the predictions about what will happen if we leave.
Rashan Faroui is more emphatic.
The world is going to carry on globalizing without us. For me personally, I would perceive the opportunities in the job market to be more international, and I would probably leave Britain, whereas if we remain, I have a strong case for remaining in Britain myself.
So you think that there's the possibility of a brain drain, essentially?
Absolutely. The job market will shift abroad, more to the States, more to Germany, more to emerging markets in Asia. The prominence of London as a financial sector will massively decline if we leave.
But wait a second, these kids go to Oxford. Their futures are assured. What about Britons who feel their wages, jobs, and safety are threatened by immigration? Peter Bergerman hails from Canada.
I think when times get tight, people tend to look for easy answers or easy solutions, and this is exactly what's happening now. This is why you kind of see the move towards these kind of populist leaders. And they approach things from let's say, a primordial nationalistic perspective, right? It's all about ethnicity on some level, Britishness on some level, which usually means, a certain stereotype.
I sense that there's been a failure on the part of the governing elites. I don't think we've explained properly what changes are happening in the world and the benefits of being in a big club, in an international, much more interdependent, much more complicated world.
Paul Flather has been a journalist, diplomat, and professor in England, but was raised in India.
I actually came as a migrant on a boat through the Suez Canal, but I'm so British that I sometimes put, other Brits to shame. The village green, the sound of cricket bats and sunny teas and lovely sandwiches, but we can't pull up the drawbridge.
Listen, there's a kind of fiction around the business of sovereignty.
Mansfield's head of college, Baroness Helena Kennedy, is also a human rights lawyer and a Labour Party member of the House of Lords.
Being the sole operator, far from giving you this swaggering, independence and freedom, actually makes you low in the list of people that nations want to do business with. They want to do business with bigger blocs, and a tiny wee country like the UK isn't going to figure very well in all of that.
But in the end, says Kennedy, the Remain case is bigger than just economics.
Europe is a union of nations, making us close enough that we would never think of ever getting involved in conflict again, about coming together in order to defeat things like fascism, coming together to prevent the kind of horror that I imagine could easily happen just now.
So that the self-interest of this country, driven by people like you, is as important in the generations to come as it has been in the generations of which I have been privileged to be a part.
So finally, how did the vote go at the Oxford Debate Union? 227 in favor of remaining, only 79 for Brexit. Next week, we'll see if the rest of the country mirrors those results in any way at all. This is Economics Correspondent Paul Solomon reporting from Oxford, England.
At the moment, polls show more British voters are in favor of leaving the European Union, but the betting markets, which have often been more accurate, see it differently. There, the wagers are weighted toward Britain staying in.